Every believer knows that we are to share our faith in Jesus Christ with others. But many of us have a difficult time doing that, even though it's a commission or a command for us to do it. On Answers for Living, I want to explore some principles that may encourage us to share the good news. And here is principle number 1. How someone responds to the gospel is far more dependent on their openness than our eloquence. Many don't want to share their faith because they feel that they won't say it well enough, or they feel that somebody will ask them a question and they won't have an answer to it, and they're afraid to say, "I don't know." By the way, if somebody asks you a question, you don't have an answer, it's really okay to say, "I don't know." And then you go home and figure that out and figure out what the answer would be. You don't need to be someone who thinks well on their feet. And you don't need to be eloquent. In Acts chapter 17, verse 22 to 32, we have a famous sermon. It's called the Mars Hill Sermon. And sermon was given by a brilliant servant of God. And it was totally spot on. And what was the response? Well, hardly any converts. So listen carefully. It is the work of God, it is the work of the Spirit of God in someone's life that causes people to respond to the gospel. We're the ones who are like casting the seed of truth out on the soil of their heart. And the fertility of the heart determines the response to that seed. It is the openness of the hearer that determines the outcome. Now, that's great freedom for you and for me. Now, Paul, he just preached a spot-on, masterful sermon, very eloquent, and his response was, well, he didn't get what he thought he was going to get. He goes off to Corinth. And when he gets to Corinth, he makes a decision. He writes about that decision in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, and he says this, "And so it was with me, brothers and sisters, when I came to you, I did not come with eloquence or human wisdom, as I proclaimed to you the testimony about God. For I resolved to know nothing while I was with you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. I came to you in weakness with great fear and trembling. My message and my preaching were not with wise and persuasive words, but with the demonstration of the Spirit's power, so that your faith might not rest on human wisdom, but on God's power." Now, this is how Paul viewed his eloquent sermon on Mars Hill. He said, "I stopped coming in eloquence and human wisdom, for I resolved, I made up my mind, I'm only going to teach Christ and Him crucified. I came in weakness, not, hey, look at me. I came in fear and trembling. I came in the power of the Spirit. And I came in the demonstration of the Spirit's power so that your faith might rest on God's power and God's power alone." How many of us know people who have put their faith in human wisdom? People have special authors and special preachers. And then all of a sudden that author or preacher is found to have a secret life or falls into a great sin. And it shakes those followers deeply, and some of them simply walk away from the faith. Why? Because their faith wasn't born in the power of God. It was on someone else's faith.